Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dualta, and in this podcast series, we will be interviewing investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we will be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. Today is the second part of our interview that myself and Darragh Everard did over the weekend. So I've been off the drink for nearly 3 months, and I've been in a good place, working hard on the business. And Darragh, who's also in recruitment, and go back and check out the first part of the interview if you want to get a bit more context on it. We used to work together in Australia years ago, and we've been quite close since. And he is the godfather of my eldest son. And so he came over anyway. We spent the weekend running and working and not drinking, which is pretty unique for the relationship that we have. And yeah, we cut these two podcast episodes. So the second one is less about me blithering about why I got into recruitment and our story. We've kind of just discussed more about some of the learnings on the podcast. I went into a little bit more on, how companies can attract the best recruiters, and how I've automated probably 90% of my business through virtual assistants. And yeah, we discussed lots of that and lots of things that we both see happening in the recruitment industry. So hope you enjoy it. I promise. Next week, or later on in the week, we will be interviewing somebody who actually knows a lot more about recruitment. But for now, you can listen to us. Thanks. Darragh.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. How was your broadcasting debut?
Abbreviated by your children.
Punctuated.
So we're back. We're back now. Some peace and quiet. So keen to pick up where we left off. Also want to touch on a few things in particular. So one thing I was keen to find out is, particularly from everyone else's perspective that sees your activity on LinkedIn, which is where they'd know you from most. So what's happening behind the scenes? Talk me through a typical week for you.
So a typical week, I suppose a lot of it's balancing the kids right now with house renovations and work. But I have 2 assistants, and I suppose a lot of the thing, like, I would start my week with a morning meeting with them. And we would do the normal thing, what most recruitment businesses do. We'd go through the live jobs or live candidates, more in our perspective that we have, interviews that are happening, what we need to do to get the week kicked off in the right way.
And those just for everyone else's benefit, those assistants aren't here with you.
No. So it started off with myself and Charlotte, and when Charlotte fell pregnant the first time, we needed to find a solution to replace 90% of her job. And we thought the best way to do that was to get a remote administrator, and take all the phone calls that Charlotte would have made away and put it on my desk. So essentially outsourcing 80% of the recruitment administration and filling that full of calls in my diary.
Okay, so how do you manage them? Like, how do you KPI them?
Well, I suppose the first thing you want to do is to work out what can you outsource, and how you go about that. So we've had Andrea with us now for 2 years, and we've built her skill set up over time. We started her on about 10 hours a week, and then she got good at one task, and then we built it up from there to 2 to 3 tasks until she's now at about from 20 to 30 hours, depending on how how busy we are. So she would she would do a lot of the formatting for us, a lot of the coordination with arranging candidates to speak with me, and a lot of the coordination for candidates to speak to our clients. I would do everything else, which is phone calls and any and content. So how would I manage her? Essentially, it's like anything, you know. We need to, if we don't have enough interviews, she needs to be sourcing more candidates. Um, if we have lots of interviews, and we need to work out, you know, what's our close percentages, where are we falling, and then we kind of just go from there, really.
Okay, so this is something you and I have talked about a lot, about
Mm.
taking away the administrative duties from the actual recruiters, like in a business in general. Like I remember when I first started with the Anderson Partnership, I asked my CEO what for any tips, and he said EBR, which is everything but recruitment. He's like,
Mm.
minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So do many recruitment companies use virtual assistants?
Yeah, they do, but not to their full extent. No way, because I think a lot of them go for really cheap virtual assistants, that and as a result, you only get the basic repetitive tasks out of them, where you really could get a lot more. So I suppose, like, along there's so much you could get them doing. Everything from helping you with building your LinkedIn accounts. So, you know, that would be like, everybody should have 30,000 LinkedIn connections within a niche. That's what we all should be shooting for, because the power of having all those people in the one LinkedIn network and engaging with them um, means that, you know, your stuff will more likely go viral.
Are you overly reliant on LinkedIn, do you think?
Well, that's where my people live. So it would be foolish of me not to be on LinkedIn. It would, like, could my business be better if I turned it into a call center and scraped phone numbers and did that as well? Yeah, it could, but that's not how I want to run my day, and it wouldn't be something that I'd enjoy right now the way I enjoy what I do.
What happens to your business if LinkedIn decides to shut its doors to recruiters, because they do operate very different sales teams between corporates and recruiters? If they decide, we're shutting up shop to recruiters, we're going to become, potentially the world's biggest recruitment firm, or we're just going to concentrate on corporates and try and save them money on recruitment fees by offering them the world's biggest database.
I become a software salesperson.
Okay, so the business folds.
And so does yours.
Okay, so talk to me about how well when you say ours would fold, like, I mean, we've got a database like most recruitment companies have.
Yeah, you do. But if LinkedIn decide that they're going to be the biggest recruitment firm in Dublin, they're just going to blitz you because they have all the IP. They can get in front of all the people all the time. Microsoft owns them, so they'll know where the data is of when people are looking. They'll be able to track them across the internet. They'll be one step ahead of you every time. So any type of recruitment firm will not be able to compete with them if they do go down that road.
So you think they couldn't surely shut down the industry?
No, but the industry, if they do that, the industry will move to a different platform.
But if you take, for example, like, I mean, do you not think
Like,
a lot of the bigger guys have different platforms by having those huge databases with hundreds of thousands of candidates on there? And like, I mean, it's always the influencing part anyway. Like, it's something Greg Savage talks about a lot, that as tech and AI develops in recruitment, it can never replace the actual recruiter because they do the influencing. LinkedIn can suggest to you, these are the top 20 people for this job that you've put in here in a certain algorithm based on the keywords in their profile, etc. But it's the ability to influence someone to go for that job and meet these people. And
sure, but I mean, let's be real about this. If they have proper social selling techniques and put their own consultants in there, and they build their own personal brands, and they've got the power of that network to be able to put them out in front of stuff and create viral content, it would be very hard to compete with them. Like, they could create the next Greg Savage tomorrow based on that. So I'd be like, that would be a worry. I mean, everybody should be trying to find their own wee niche platform. Um, I think if to answer your question, if LinkedIn did that to agencies, then as a rec to rec, I'm sure we would be looking where are all the agencies now going to live, and then we'd go and live wherever they're living and embed ourselves in it. So we would just evolve with the industry.
Could you ever see LinkedIn doing that?
Nah, there's too much revenue being brought in on their licenses. And it's reoccurring revenue. It's not a consulting business. They don't have to worry about it. Um, so they're not reliant on people as much. So their costs are really low. So they're just a great business as the way they are. So whether they like agencies or not is completely a different question. But I don't see them doing this.
One thing that I couldn't wrap my head around that you told me earlier today was that you don't have a LinkedIn recruiter account when the cost will be covered by one fee. Why not?
Um, it's a good question.
Everything's always one fee, by the way, isn't it? That's one thing myself, my
it,
boss, and I'll talk about. Every time we come
yeah,
up with an idea, it's always, well, we know that's one fee. That's one fee until that's 50 fees because you want to do all the 50 new things.
yeah. And a new kitchen's one fee for me, and a new wardrobe, and a new this, and a new that, and a new car, and before I know it, I need to make 25 just to break even, and and that's as a sole contributor with a couple of VAs, that then becomes a challenge. Um, Essentially, there's two things I'm not very good at. I'm not good at email marketing, and I'm not good at in-mail marketing. I found my results weren't very good when I did have LinkedIn Recruiter. So I thought I'm quite good at creating viral content. Um, so I'm going to concentrate on that and known just by demonstrating who I am or what my opinion is. And then when people get more familiar with me, then it's a warmer first connection. So let me take it back a step. So if you're building your LinkedIn accounts correctly, like we have a Filipino who helps us with that. Giselle's her name, and she made sure that every account is clean, built up, and that means that we've lots of first connections. And what you can do from there is you can get her to send the first message. Hey, this is it is. If you can give value in that first message, brilliant. Like, so we'll send the podcast, and then it's about, then the next bit is about figuring out, did they listen to the podcast, did they get value from it, is there any way that we could get a conversation with them, could we make a comment on their thing, whatever that is, all that can be working in the background. So whenever you do really aggressively go after and try and headhunt them, that they're aware of who you are, they've seen your content, you've messaged them, they know that you understand them, they know that you're embedded in their community, they know that you have opportunities. So before you even get to speak to them, you have more trust than somebody who's just pitching them a job.
So do you not think your lack of success with LinkedIn Recruiter was more down to how you were using the tool than the tool itself?
Yeah, I do think it was a lot of that. And like recently, one of my peers, Josh Harrison, has gone through what the success that he's having from LinkedIn Recruiter and the ROI that he's had. And he said, look, there's been a lot of changes recently, um, and so I'm gonna have a bit of a chat with him. I've asked him, could he give me a hand with seeing it? So yeah, I'm sure it is down to my own incompetence.
So so where did the idea of the podcast come from then? Because you've been talking about inbound marketing for a while. Where did the idea of the podcast come from?
So I'm a bit of a business nerd, as you know, and I listen to other business podcasts. And one of the ones that I listen to is the Tropical MBA for location independent business owners, um, and and the part of they're always pushing people to set up a podcast, and they go through the benefits on all that of it. And then more recently, I've listened to a lot of Gary V, who is a social media speaker, guru, character that has really just, like, he's massive right now. and he encourages everybody to do it. So I had a look at that, and I had to listen to some of the recruitment content out there, and it's very most of it's focused for internal recruiters first of all, and then a lot of it's just wanky. It's very like customer care and people trying to make themselves sound like they're really like special or whatever, or maybe they're just selling too many software vending things. And then I kind of asked myself, like, is there anything out there that could have helped me when I was setting up my recruitment business? Is there anything like that would be able to do that? And I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I reached out to yourself and Gareth, because I know you're publicity hounds, and
Says the fellow who's made a business about himself.
absolutely, and I just give it a go to see what it was like, and the reception was good. What I also did was I reached out to a few famous people. You mentioned Greg Savage there. I reached out to him, and he emailed me 24 hours later and said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to be involved. Can't do it for 2 months. Hope that's okay." And I was like, "So he's accessible. So that really means everybody is. So this is going so as long as I can elicit the right information out of people, and I'm into what I do, and I'm able to get guests, then I think this will be really interesting." But I think the longer term plan with it is that Hunted. I know you're not aware of who they are, but they're they're kind of like a Rector platform where they brand they kind of give away all the IP. So they showcase lots of clients. They're a big job board with a Rector on the back end, basically. But they do quite good content, and and they've kind of flipped the script for me in my industry, because you know a lot of the IP is on their website and stuff. So I had to ask myself, how can I do things a bit better than them? And I feel like if I can interview 200 amazing startup recruitment firms and leaders and people in the industry, and I can put that all on the website, and I can use that as part of my business whenever I'm not selling jobs per se, but if somebody wants advice in their career and they say, "Oh, I want to go to New York," I'm like, "Okay, well, here's 5 people that we've had on the podcast. Here's their businesses. Um, you might be suitable to this, but go have a listen and you tell me, and then we can discuss it and we can discuss the other things." So they've already, before they've gone to the interview, they feel like they've spent an hour with me, an hour with the client. They got to know how the client became successful, and they got to know a little bit about their business. And it's not just the vanilla, you can come in and you'll make a fortune. Like, they've heard the hards, the hard times, the highs, the lows, and it's storytelling. So yeah, that's it.
And do you think, from particularly to focus on the recruiter startup interviews that you've done, is there generally a consistent theme, or is everyone's story different?
Everyone's story is very different. I think I mentioned in the first part of the series, a lot of people do come from S3, and they've bred a lot of good companies. Uh, I think no, there's definitely different stories uh, out there. Um, a lot of people do fall into recruitment, and I suppose it depends on the business that you want to build, and whether you're funded, whether you're not, whether you want to have a boutique, whether you want to be like Rich Rosen and bill 1 million a year and just hang out in Boston, or you want to create the next Michael Page. It
And
just depends.
you've talked about a couple of people that influence you there, like Gary Vee and the Tropical MBA. I know that you're a fan of Joe Rogan from a personal perspective, and I'm sure that fuels some of the thought on a podcast. Anyone else you found a big influence on you?
Well, Joe Rogan's a massive one for me, because he fills his diary full of stuff he wants to do. He works on stuff that he's into and interested in, and he tries to keep himself in check. And that he would definitely be my biggest influence. It's funny, when I interview people on the podcast, I think I'm a bit like you. I get excited about them a bit too much for about 24 hours afterwards, and then I'm on to the next one. And sometimes actually, I can feel a bit guilty about not building a scalable business because I'm speaking to impressive people like Toby Babb, and I'm going, oh, wow, I should be doing something like that. Like I kind of have a lot of the knowledge now, but I'm not putting in the same structures to have the same outcome as him. But then, do I really want it enough the way that he does? And that probably sets those people apart from me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something that Jordan Peterson has become. He's a clinical psychologist from Canada, and he's 45 million views on YouTube, and he's really become a huge sensation recently. And he talks a lot about why guys, particularly like us guys between 18 and 36, they develop idols and almost demigods, and they do obsess about people, because guys in particular don't often have a particular purpose, so they throw themselves into work. And it's why, because there's so many people are obsessed with superheroes, these sort of demigod males. And I think it is a big thing that you talk to someone who's successful, and then you obsess about that for a while, and then you move on to the next one, then you obsess about that for a while. And I think it's really important when you're in a smaller firm as well. These podcasts, a lot of people I've talked to that are in small firms that don't necessarily have 10 people who've built a million around them that you would have in some of the bigger shops, that it's important for them to know that these stories are out there, and that people
Yeah,
have created awesome lives and awesome businesses, and can work from home and make $1 million a year. Like, I think that the awareness that that's a possibility, and the constant reminder that that's a possibility, is a big thing for when you're in those dark days in work.
yeah, and we all have them. Like even Rich Rosen making $1 million from home, he has them too. But he just trusts the work and gets on with it.
What was your darkest days? 'Cause I remember at one stage you turned around to me saying, I think I might get a job. I'm done. I'm done.
I might become a business lecturer, wasn't that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna, and I had to slap you out of it along with Gareth. But
yeah. He's both talked me off the ledge.
like, I mean,
Um,
everyone has moments. What was your darkest moment, and how'd you get over it?
I've had a few up and downs. Do you know what? I'd say a lot of it is related to physical health and not keeping myself in check. I'm into sport, I'm into working out, I'm into all that, but I'm also into living a bit. And sometimes I get a bit fat, and sometimes I get a bit boozy. And I find that if I've gone through a bit of a fat phase where I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm kind of working, my work suffers, my everything around me suffers. Um, so that's happened quite a few times. From a professional perspective, I think on our second year in business, we didn't push ourselves as hard. We thought we might get into a tech startup and partnering with somebody on a project, and it kind of took my eye off the ball a little bit. And Charlotte wasn't sure if she wanted to continue in it or if she wanted to have kids, and like we just kind of coasted by and figuring out if we really wanted to do it. And then as soon as my first son was born, I was like, okay, now I need to make cash, and I need to start being thankful for the opportunity I have. Like, I could still be that guy cleaning ashtrays at 7 in the morning in a nightclub, whether it was managing it or not. That's what I was doing. So, right, okay, let's double down and at least give it a good go.
Do you look for that when you're interviewing recruiters, or would you suggest people do look for that when they're interviewing recruiters? Like, you've spoken a lot about before that you ask people the question, have you faced adversity before? Tell me about how you faced adversity. Do you think everyone should ask people, have you had your ashtray cleaning moment at 7 o'clock in the morning as a master's educated 26-year-old? Have you hit rock bottom?
Yeah, most of them won't because they're so young. But you'll probably find that wronging that got in a bit late to recruitment is going to be gold.
What do you think is the optimal age to take recruiters in? Like, I mean, because people sometimes
What's the optimal age to brainwash somebody?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, do you brainwash them straight off the bat, or do you let them get a bit more mature and have a bit of commercial experience and a bit of life experience, and take them in at 28 and say, look, you've been making X amount for the first 6 years of your professional career. Let's now make this.
I don't know, man, but like, I think if somebody is a bit older and they're in debt and they need it more, and they've got kids, they will make that work. But I'd be worried that they might leave my business and go somewhere easier. Like some, I don't know. Like I suppose it depends on the culture that you're trying to set up, doesn't it? If like the benefits of hiring somebody really young, or is you can get a lot of them in at the same time at a lower cost, and I think younger people are a bit more, you can influence them a bit more. Like they don't have a lot of life experience to bounce things off. So recruitment firms definitely take advantage of that, and so they should, because they're giving people an opportunity. So don't think that that's me slagging off the industry. Um,
And do you have go-to influences, like, because like, I mean, working by yourself has got to be tough sometimes, because you don't have like looking back on the jobs that I've had, like, I mean, sometimes it was so cathartic for us all to go for lunch together, talk about our woes, pick each other up, and get back on it. But you don't have that. But obviously, bar Charlotte, and the VAs aren't going through the same ups and downs that you are. Do you have influences that you either watch on YouTube or movies you watch or something like that to pick yourself back up?
so it's funny you ask. Recently, I set up a group for Rector X in the UK. So I have 15 Rector X in there, and they're all going through the same stuff as me, and that's interesting. So that's helped a little bit. That's very recent. Um, Outside of that, I'd say, like I would communicate with you a little bit. Um, Gareth is in a very similar circumstance to me, so I would talk with him a little bit, but not too much. But I usually find I'm quite resilient, to be honest. Like I can, as long as I get out and have a run and work out, and I like I can just kind of get on with it. Like I'm pretty good like that. As long as my physical health is in check, my mental health is in check, then so I'm really able to go. And I think just that resilience piece has always kind of helped me out.
It's fun. So interesting you mentioned about working out and stuff. Like, I mean, you're going through a bit of a clean living stage at the moment, probably out of pure necessity with the personal situation you're in. But you're going through a few months of not drinking and working out and eating healthy, and you've had your two best months in business. Um, has that really impacted the business that much and your own work?
So the first thing that happened was when I stopped drinking, I started self-analyzing a bit more. So I find alcohol numbs me a little bit. Like I've got a hyperactive mind, and I'm a bit hyper in general. So I think I use alcohol just to kind of calm things down and slow down a bit. And I think whenever I stopped doing that, straight away, I started looking, okay, oh, right, you're a bit fat, right, get to the gym, fix that. Okay, God, you haven't ran in 10 years properly. You had to stop playing football because you couldn't really run anymore. Okay, right, let's start running every day. So started doing that. And then I was looking at the business stuff, and I looked at the numbers, and I said, look, a lot of stuff get to interview stage, and we haven't closed for one reason or another. So I started looking at the candidate experience journey, and then I started fixing that. So my close ratio started getting better. So it's like, okay, right, that's good. Okay, so how do I get candidates? And usually it's from being known and messaging on LinkedIn. So, okay, right, let's multiply that by 1,000. Okay, let's do that and create a system around that, and then increase the outputs on that. So just doing more, but doing it better. And then I remember when I did the podcast at the start, maybe I've asked Charlotte and asked a few others. So how often do you think I should do that? And she was like, oh, once every couple of weeks, maybe. And I was like, all right, okay. And then when I got sober, I was like, I'm just going to do a podcast whenever I get a chance. Like, if somebody wants to speak to me and they're interested, I'm going to do the story. I'm going to get it out there. And as I did that, people started calling in jobs more and more, and really asking me to work with them. And candidates that we're working with decided to only interview at one client and took the job, and because they felt like, oh, that's the guy I want to work for. So just, I would say my decision making process got better because I was self-analyzing better, and I was being the better version of myself. I think that there's probably the best way I could answer that.
Do you think there's a drinking problem in recruitment?
I think our generation from regional Ireland, I don't know what it's like with all the yuppies that you pretend to be, but definitely there's a boozy culture where I grew up in, and when we were in recruitment in Australia, beer's coming into the office. It's all part of it. It's all booze, 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 and it's a tough job, and a lot of people self-medicate from it. Um, so yeah, look, it's a as an industry, I don't think we promote healthy living as much. I think the Wolf of Wall Street play hard, work hard days are, I think they're coming to an end. Like, I think the newer generation are more mindful of their bodies, of their mind. They're more into themselves. They're more into Instagram, whereas like our role models growing up were Oasis and rock stars. Were now they're kind of like, well, who's the best poser on Instagram? I'm not even on Instagram, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're just like, you'll know more about that than me because you're managing millennials.
Well, I think it's different. Like, one big difference that I've noticed, and it might be a difference between Australia and Dublin, was that, like, we would have that, like you said, like the drinks come out at 4 o'clock or even 3 o'clock on a Friday in Australia, and everyone boozes together on a Friday in recruitment in Australia. And part of that is because that becomes your network. Your friends are all the people you work, particularly in recruitment, because you got a room full of people in the mid-20s away from home. They're all going to automatically become friends. They're generally quite social anyway. So, that's automatic. Whereas and I tried to breed that culture in Dublin, and I was really keen to be, an almost Aussie-ish business in Dublin, like, have a bit of an early finish and go for drinks. But, one thing I noticed is when you're working with a bunch of people who've got their own friends and their own family around, they don't have to go for drinks every Friday. They've got their own mates to doing that with. They've got family meals on. It's very different. But I think there's a bit of an issue in the industry, and I think it's one thing that it adds to the burnout rate happening so quickly, because like I hate drinking with recruiters. Like, I've done it for 10 years, and I'm over it, because 99% of recruiters, when they're drinking, are either telling you how amazing they're doing or how terrible they're doing, and the actual,
or how shit the person beside them is.
Yeah, and the reality is, 80% of them are just somewhere in the middle. 80% of them are just doing fine. They might be hitting the target some months, other months they're not. But I think, particularly because recruitment takes in a lot of people who are very sporty, you get these guys or girls, and they come in and they've got this really competitive sports edge to them. And then, there's client drinks, there's client lunches that turn into drinks, there's quarterly events, there's monthly events, and a lot of them get out of shape, and they turn around someday and go, I'm burnt out, I'm out of shape, I'm unhealthy, and they end up splitting. But I think it's changing for sure. Like a lot of recruitment companies used to promote, we have drinks every Friday. Now more recruitment companies are promoting, we go to the gym twice a week. You have a wellness program now. We have a personal trainer who comes in once a week.
Yeah, it's changing. It's changing for the better. But there was some crack out drinking too, though. Like, I wouldn't change a lot of it.
Oh, but they're all the best memories. Like, I can't tell you what I did, Q3 to 2012, but I can tell you what happened at the Christmas party that year. You know what I mean? I remember watching one guy, having his ass bitten at the Christmas party, and everyone looking on laughing. Like, there was one, like, you remember, the room was wrecked. There was relationships broke up over it. There was, you know yourself, the usual. But one thing you mentioned there was, we talked a little bit about wellness, and you made a post a couple of months back about, everything I've learned over the last 3 years. If I was to set up a recruitment company, I would give you these steps. Can you remember any of those? Because wellness was one of them.
I think I took a bit from what I learned from the podcast on that. And one of the ones that springs to mind is the location of where you set your business up. And there's lots of businesses that are setting up in LA right now. And they're doing it not because there's an unbelievable market in LA. A lot of them are making money out of San Fran, and they're making money out of other areas across America. They're doing it because it can attract the best UK talent. It sets them apart. So come live in sunny California, leave shithole where X and outside of Barnsley, where you're making 40 grand a year all in, and when you're working every hour under the sun, and come over here and make 250. And I think that's a real selling point. The other bit was, it was kind of just further on that, base yourself in a market that's in a boom. So as you know, from being in Australia and in being in Dublin now, like if you have a choice between working in a boom market or a bust market, you'll choose a boom every time. Fees are higher, products going out the door faster. It's just a more fun job when you're winning, and it's easier to win in a great market. I think I said, like, pick a niche discipline, and what I mean by that is, like, if you're a recruiter and you're doing A&F junior stuff and you're doing public sector, I mean, you're going to get bored of that pretty quick. Like, your candidates are going to be pretty boring. Or you're doing IT infrastructure level 1 and 2, you're dealing with just basic people who work in a call center. I mean, they're not interested in roles to recruit. Where if you could be focused on cybersecurity in a really dynamic fintech industry, that would be much better than doing level 1 infrastructure for public sector in Barnsley. Like it's about, like, creating something interesting for the recruiter to get into, and it's easier for them to mirror that industry and get involved in it and go to events because it's really interesting. And I think that's really important.
Do you think it matters how interesting the jobs are? Because one, that's subjective anyway, and two, if the jobs are that interesting to the consultants, they'd be doing that sort of job. Like, I've always been a believer that if people are making money, that's what interests them. Like, does it really matter?
Well, there's making money and there's making money. If you're making 2 placements a month out of doing A&F transactional in Barnsley, you're going to be billing, I know, Didsbury, wherever, there's loads of them, isn't there? So if you're doing that, you're making 8 grand a month on your billings, so you're not really going to be bringing in much. You're like, it's, if you're doing 2 placements in America in cybersecurity in an area that you have to learn to like, it takes a while to get the hang of a complex discipline. So at least your brain's been active and you're having to learn, having to keep up to date with whatever's latest in the industry. But you're also knowing that when you make a placement in this space,
that's more fee value thing
big money, so it means more.
Like I know that, like, one client of yours, and the guys who set it up were always temp transaction recruiters, but they were $1 million billers.
Yeah, I know, but then they're able to move. They both moved up to qual very quickly whenever they had their own business, and then put the other people at the lower level. It's like, and then they're constantly setting up new offices to keep themselves interested. But then again, I suppose that's where we go back to that intellectual thing, where sometimes the best recruiters aren't the most intellectual. They're able to just focus on, if this lower end might not be that interesting, but if I do 1,000 times the output, I'll make a fortune, and that's enough for me. And that works for some people. For me, I liked doing executive level IT, where I'd get to know about the enterprise architecture of the business, and I get into really the granular of all of that. And for me, that's really interesting. And if I'm honest, the best recruiters that I come across are like to mirror and get into the industry verticals that they're recruiting in. And it's like, you'd be surprised at the talent level. It's why I think, like, when you go further up the food chain, so like, industrial recruiters, social care recruiters, and the likes, the talent doesn't, like, in my opinion, the talent there is nowhere near as good as high level IT recruiters, high level engineering recruiters, just just based on the amount
But
that
they're
they
completely different jobs as
have
well.
to
Like we know,
learn
but like when I
to get
interview,
into the system on it.
people who've come from blue collar recruitment in particular, like most of those people who, when I really, really break down their week and their month, it's 80% admin. Like a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Whereas if you get people doing
Yeah,
exec
and
search,
that's
like
all
that's
automated now anyway.
it's research and it's influencing and it's meeting and it's coercing and it's there's a lot more research in it because like I mean if you're doing stuff say 100K plus, let's say, a lot of people who are on 100K plus are pretty happy where they are. You really have to understand your opportunity and your client to be able to prize them away from that. Like it's a completely different job.
Yeah, yeah, but our job should be that. It should be
Yeah.
getting awesome
So
people
on that,
better
because
jobs. We're
like
not here to
so
help
which
everybody.
disciplines would you recommend people focusing on over the next few years? Because you've spoken before about if you want to get a really good job in recruitment somewhere, you ideally will have worked in a sort of a mainstream discipline like financial services, accounting, IT, engineering in a big boy, and then you move on. Like I remember for a while in Sydney in particular, it was all digital. As soon as the digital industry started to boom, everyone wanted to get into digital before everyone else did. Do you know what I mean? Like, what would you recommend people getting into? Or what do you see? Sorry to keep asking a million questions. Best way to ask is, what do you see being the biggest industry for people to work in over the next 5 years?
So I think oil and gas is going to bounce back in the next 6 months. I'm hearing rumblings on it, and as you know, average recruiters can make a ton of money in that space when it gets going, but you have to be really careful over who you join, um, because it is quite PSL driven, and the company that you join needs to have their insurances in place, so you have to be careful on that. So that and renewable energy is a massive area. The What I do is I track the fastest growing recruitment firms from the UK around the world, and I analyze where they're at, what they're going into, and I speak to their founders as to where they're thinking. Um, fintech is an area that's growing massively, and that's because the banking sector is getting deregulated, and as a result, there's lots of other newer, more nimble banking solutions out there, and it's more exciting for the people to leave the banking industry and join the fintech industry. So that's another area. Um, like the high end banking, treasury, that's always going to be awesome in the main locations. The other bit that seems to be flying is the pharma space, and there's a lot of firms that are opening up in that. The fees are really high, candidates are hard to find, and yeah, so uh, probably and obviously general tech as well. Like security seems to be something that's only growing and growing and growing. Um,
Like,
and
do you
yeah,
think there's value in
those would be
almost
the key
LinkedIn
areas.
proofing your business by being in areas like that? Like, for example, you're so into LinkedIn partly because all of your candidate base are on there all the time, nonstop. Like, but if you were recruiting, high
Yeah.
level scientists or pharma guys, they don't care about LinkedIn. They're not on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you want to be wherever your candidates are. So like if you're doing IT developers, you want to be in GitHub, or you want to be loving and embedded in that community space. I think the days of recruiters being stuck in offices and wearing shirts and ties, and unless you're in the bank recruiting banking, I think those days are over. I think we all need to be a bit more nimble now. I heard recently Walters are putting people in WeWork stations, which I thought was a big transition for them. So they're putting tech recruiters in there to embed into the communities. And that's so far removed from the way that they operate. But they've obviously heard that, look, this is what we need to do to appeal to the next generation of tech workers. And I think that like that's exactly where I'd also want to be. I'd want to be like when we will move to the States, and I will be in a WeWork station, and I will really want to be in around other entrepreneurs, learning what I can do next. And I think that
If
there's
your if
almost more
your
valuable
little
than being
fella
in a
Connor
call center.
came to you one day and said, "I want to be a recruiter," who would you send him to learn?
That's a good one. Well, firstly, if he does, that means the industry survived,
Is that you
which
buying time to see which one of your
which is
clients you're going to
great.
single out?
But no, I'm just trying to think, like, what will the industry look like in 20 years if that's the case? You know, like, like what, like, recruitment won't exist the way it does today, right? Like, like this, it, like I can, like, voice is going to change everything in the next 5 years. So, like, we'll be able to just say to Siri, "Oh, give me that shot." Like, work out who the 100 people are that are most suitable to this. Send a first, connect with them all on LinkedIn for me. Send a first message on it, and then schedule my diary around people, and then come up with a message sequence that gets them agreeing to have a phone call with me. And
okay, so
like I like that's only
if there were
around the corner.
2 or 3 tools that are out there from a tech perspective that you would recommend to people who are running a recruitment business to adopt like straight away today, what would they be?
That's a really good question. I honestly don't feel I'm across it enough to say that, to go into it. Like I have scheduled a few vendors to come on the show. I've heard that like Pocket Recruiter, Candidate ID, and a few and a few others like Hire Tool are supposed to be really good, and I've kind of had a look at them. The they might be something that to look at. I think we were discussing a
Cube
KPA
19?
a KPA thing earlier. What was that called? Cube 19. That sounds pretty good too. But no, I feel like I'm not qualified enough to
Okay.
comment
So
on that right
one
now,
thing you are
especially because I'm
qualified to
not a
comment
super
on is
user in anything.
why a recruiter chooses a recruitment business. So, you know, you'll get multiple options for your candidates. They'll have multiple options elsewhere sometimes as well. What's the criteria a really, really good, strong recruiter uses to pick the right firm?
Like my clients, like John Colburn, who like anytime I put somebody in front of them, they want to work for him, they buy into his vision, his project, and he's able to relate what he does as being best in class, and they feel like the best people know that they're good, so they're like, okay, I want to work for the best people. So that's the first thing. Um, if you want experienced hires, and I suppose the next thing goes back to the location and the disciplines, and putting together a value proposition that makes it feel like you couldn't get better than this. One of the things I think I could probably get better at is working out what actually that means when it's just in a local city. Like what would, outside of the people, what things would attract recruiters just to move in the city. And it usually kind of comes down to opportunity, money, and again people. So it's a convoluted answer. I don't know if I've answered it correctly.
You have, but it's interesting. You haven't touched on things that others might consider, like, for example, the commission structure, the progression, you have touched on culture, really. Where do they all come in, all of those bits and pieces?
If they're really money motivated, and they're not, the commission structure can come in quite early, but I usually find that it's a good one to draw people in to discuss, and it's a good one to maybe get people out of Walters or somewhere where the commission isn't great. And but does it come down to it in the end? Does it make that big a difference? I don't know if it does as much as it should. The progression's important, but I think the progression's only important if they've bought into the vision of where the business is going and where they can go with it. Like, they want purpose, not progression.
What's the main reason recruiters leave a business?
Because they failed.
Okay. What's the main reason good recruiters leave a
That
business?
would be the main.
Successful ones.
Okay. Yeah. I think a lot of them like after that 3 year mark, 2-3 year mark, recruiters get bored of their projects. They just like you have to make sure that they're bought into the next stage of their career. So when I'd always worry about principal consultants who are just doing the one thing because they can always make more money if they sit at home and do it for themselves. So if they're a good principal consultant, like there's only a matter of time before they're in a wee work station flicking people around. I think you as a business owner need to know what direction you're going in. You need to get the person's buy-in to be on that journey with you, and you need to map out the steps that they need to take to get to that point. I think whenever businesses stall as a whole and consultants see that the promises weren't lived up upon, they're quite short-termism. Like they don't. They'll be like, right, well, I'm going to somewhere that is a better platform.
And what
are
the if you look at the businesses that are retaining people the best, and I'm not talking about the average performance, like retaining people billing, let's say, $500 a year plus. What are they doing to keep those people?
I don't know. It's a good question. I honestly don't have an answer for that. I suppose they're just locked in financially. A lot of them would be contract billers, wouldn't they? America's a different market. Like if somebody's billing big money in America, they're just going to set up on their own. In the UK, they're much more likely to be career oriented.
Is there any way, if you have people in your team that you are worried about them going out on their own, is there a way to retain them? Is there structures you can put in place? Is there any way to keep those people and stop them going out by themselves?
Well, I suppose you have to let them know what the vision of the business is and make it part of their own vision. So, like, is your vision to get to a 50-person office and be acquired and get sold? If so, what does that mean for them? Like, how can they be part of that to get to the outcome? Do you have personal milestones that you can put into them? Like, is it through the normal like manager, director, or open up your own office? I think like the best companies are able to let people within their business be entrepreneurial. So they'll be like, well, what business? If you were like I would meet it head on. Like, what business do you want to set up? And I'd get them to work backwards on it and think about that. Like, do you want to be at home with 2 screaming kids and work for yourself? Not that I do that. I have my own office, but is that what you want? Because if it is, if it isn't, it's going to be hard to grow a 1 to 10 person office. It's hard to get to that point. It takes money and it takes a bit of luck. So we can do that with you. We can help you get to that point. You can be a part owner. You don't have to take all that risk yourself. So I think it's involving the best people in the business. I would just be worried about anybody who's a principal consultant that has no interest in being part of the future of the business and just wants to sit, because they'll go.
If you look at the really, really good recruiters that you've represented, because obviously recruiters are readily available out there. So, for Rec Direct fee to be paid, you're generally going to have to work with the top 5% or so. How do you turn someone into a top 5% recruiter?
How do you turn them into a top 5% recruiter? Recording this, I'm just walking up the stairs because my kids have just come in. So could you just repeat the question?
You can only get paid for the top 5% of your market, okay? For a Rec Direct fee to be paid, you're going to have to represent the top 5% of recruiters in the marketplace. So you would have obviously studied their training and how they work and everything else. if you look at the people you get paid for, how do you turn? How do you turn? How have those businesses turned those people into
Hmm.
being that top 5%, or are they just naturally like that?
Um, whenever they call me, I can tell instantly that they're going to be good. Because, well, most of them anyway, they're able to build rapport real quick. So that's the first thing. I feel like, oh, you're all right straight away, and they're at ease with themselves, and they're at ease talking to me, and I can tell straight away, okay, you're comfortable in your own skin, like you're confident talking to me.
But
But
sorry, let's
then the
let's
next
let's
thing
break
they
this
do
down
is
into
they ask
nature
me
and
really
nurture,
good
because
questions,
that's a little
and
bit of nature there. That may be something that they're just good at naturally. But I'm talking about what a recruitment firm can do to nurture that.
I suppose you need to, well, I mean, the basic one is just the training. The get the like teach them how to ask questions all the time. Make them be inquisitive all the time. Make them
Okay,
yeah. I
when a
I, I
client
don't know how to answer
calls
that
you and
really.
says, "Right, I want you to find people for me," what do you look for?
Hmm. Depends on the client. Like, I mean, you want to be matching the person and the stage of their career to the client. So if somebody's 36 and they've been in the industry 5 to 6 years, maybe they're a billing manager, maybe they're principal consultant, I wouldn't be putting them into a high growth company. I'd be putting them into a boutique, and I'd be making sure that they're still happy to bill and all the rest. But if somebody's 22 and they're from Barnsley, say, and they're at like Premier Group or one of those places that the KPIs are really high, I can place them in so many, because there's so many high growth companies that
Mhm.
can take an average person like that and turn them into a killer, because the platform's there. If somebody's at Walters and they're quite consultative, and they're doing that, there's kind of high growth boutiques that are somewhere in between. And I know that, okay, I know your pain points and your frustrations at Walters, and I know that you'll match this, like they'll be able to take that away, and you'll be able to fit with this type of a company, just based on the way that they operate and that. So it's kind of just fitting people, like different people with different types of companies, based on on what you think will work.
What would make you turn away a client? So if a client comes to you and says, "I want you to recruit people for me," I'm guessing are there some clients you've said, "No, I can't help you"? Why is that?
Most of them, to be honest, because they can't articulate their own value proposition. So, like, if they can't tell me their story properly, then you know how can they demonstrate that to a recruiter? You know, um, it's it's a hard one. Like, but because like a lot of them will say, like you'll get calls and they'll say, "Can you get me somebody from Robert Walters or Michael Page to work for?" I've got 3 people in the I've got a team of 5 and all the rest. So then I'll say, okay, do you come from those businesses? No. Have you ever hired somebody from those businesses? No. Why do you think they'll join you? Like, what are you offering? Like, oh, we'll give them 30K. Well, they're only on it. They're on 28 right now, and they've got a massive platform. Like, what are you offering that's going to attract the best people to you? So I prefer to deal with people who have all that figured out. And I think when you do that and you work with the best companies, you always know that when you get the best candidates, you can match them with the best companies. Now, there's loads of average recruiters out there in average disciplines, and you can match them with average companies, but I don't do that.
So do you almost feel like they have to make you excited enough to think that you'd want to work there, and then you can take that energy and sell it on?
Yeah, big time. And look, they don't have to be a world beater, but like when I had a boutique on the podcast yesterday, and just just had a great story, you know, and he'd he had a good career, and I could tell, like, he articulated himself well, and he knew his market, and he knew that their value proposition. And at the end of it, I thought, you're a real safe place. I could take somebody, out of Badenoch and Clark, who's doing a lower level discipline, and you could turn them into a class recruiter. You could give them that next step. So part of it's just that buzz of, if somebody's in an average discipline, get them into a better discipline. If somebody's in an average firm, get them into a better firm. Like, finding that value proposition for the recruiter is key, because they always have to make that. Everybody has to
Yeah,
make
and
that
it's
step
interesting
in their
because
next
sometimes you
job,
see them
don't
go
they?
from the big boys into boutique, and then sometimes it's a failed move to go the opposite way. You know, they haven't been able to survive in a small firm, so they go in for the comfort of the big one. What do you think is the biggest mistake recruitment firms make when they're in the interview process and they're trying to attract someone?
um, oh God, I've seen a lot. More and more, my clients are really good at it, and they're getting better. Like, I think people are tightening up the processes all the time. One I think I've seen is with Walters and Page, and they get a senior con to do an interview with the PRC for practice. Or will, like, yeah, go you in now and interviewing them like they're a director, and that can put off people. And it's happened to me a lot over the years when we used to deal with them a lot. And like, get the owner on as quickly as possible. Like, get that Ryan, so they can go, I want to be you. And then that person maps out, here's how you can be me if you do all this. Like, I don't want to be like, you don't want to be that other lad. In fact, keep him away from the whole process. That's that's a big, like, I suppose that means don't show the engine, keep the hood down. Like, keep that allure of Ryan smelling nice.
What do you think about the idea of always being people being told that there's a hot desk there for them? Is that do people still use that?
And they do. It's only true if somebody's left the desk recently and it's a replacement hire. So they do exist. But I mean, yeah, it, that's the only time it does. So I have no problem
And what do
with
you
it
think
as
about
long as it's
involving the
qualified.
staff? Like, I mean, you see a lot of these, we'll go for lunch and see if you guys can get on, or we'll take them out for Friday night drinks. Does that work?
Nah, I wouldn't go near it.
Why
It's
is
a
that?
waste of time. Just, like, because staff have their own agendas. Some of them are protecting their own wee nest egg. Like, I would just, like, the business owner just needs to know, this is the framework. Here's the platform. You fit here. We're going to make it work. And if it doesn't, we're going to make a decision real quickly to cut it. Done. Right. And that's the way
And
it
how
should
do you
be.
close
But I could
people
be wrong.
who close for a living? You let the client? Do you let
I
the
don't.
opportunity close itself, or the client
So
close it?
I like, yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I usually we'll get to a point where we'll have 2, 3 offers, and the client will discuss through it. On the odd occasion, I I can do it because I usually know the companies they're against. So if I haven't represented them to them, I'll know why, and I'll illustrate that. But I feel like the whole process, the closing starts from the first conversation, and it just continues and continues and continues through information. I think I've always been like that. I don't think I've really been like closing in a sales perspective, or maybe I'm just not seeing myself in the same way
No, I
that,
agree.
that somebody else
I've
does.
always said, like, this job is half research, half sales. Like, if you've done enough research on your candidate and on your client, the sales should take care of itself. You obviously have to steer them in the right direction, but they should sell each other to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me this, Darragh.
Let's go.
Are we going out for dinner
Thanks.
now?
See ya.
All right, buddy. Well, there you go. Darragh Everard making his broadcasting debut. It was an interesting interview, I thought. Like, we didn't really script it, or we didn't at all, or we didn't plan it. So hopefully we didn't just go off on too many tangents. But I suppose that's just the types of conversations that people have who've been in recruitment for, I think he's been in it for nearly 10 years now. And yeah, I really enjoyed catching up with him and talking about all the experiences that we've had in working in different locations around the world. And I promise we will get somebody who can actually answer all the questions on very soon, because I felt that there was at times there where he was asking me questions that I would ask somebody who scaled proper businesses. And I just had to be honest and say, look, I mean, I'm not really qualified to answer this question or that question. And then we just moved on. So I thought it was an interesting interview, and hopefully you all have got a bit of benefit from it. And if not, hopefully you enjoyed the kind of crack that we had. All right, we'll have another guest on later in the week. Take care. God bless.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.